Hello and welcome to another episode of Players. And no, your audio settings haven't gone bonkers. This is indeed not Joan you're listening to, because Joan is the one being interviewed today. So let's jump right into it. Hello, Joan.
Hello.
Could you, for the record, state your name and your age?
Yes, I can. My name is Joan Jacobson, well, I do have a middle name, but it involves a Danish letter, which is basically a slashed O. And for the sake of the listeners, I'm not going to pronounce it because my experience is that the English speakers have, well, they can fracture their tongue trying to pronounce it, despite not having any bones in it. And I'm 41 years old, so I actually believe I'm the oldest of the lot of us.
Yes, I think that's true. And so, what is it that you do?
Well, at the moment I'm unemployed, which is because I'm partially disabled, which means that there are special conditions concerning what jobs I can do. And that obviously makes it kind of hard to find a job at all. But, well, I'm sort of, kind of, certainly, possibly, potentially, maybe hopeful that I'm going to find something sooner rather than later, because, quite frankly, walking around with nothing to do, I think, is enough to drive anyone spare.
Yeah, it does take a toll on.
It does. It really does.
Yep. Okay, so you're not currently doing anything, but or at least not vocation-wise. But what kind of education do you have then?
Well, it's like everybody else has said in their interview so far. I have the basic Danish schooling, which is 10 years, and then I have 3 years of business high school to add on top of that, and then I have, well, several attempts at various educations behind me that failed because, quite frankly, I was too sick at the time to actually complete anything. But back in 2002, I finally got started on what I should have done from the beginning, which was to study history. And I have a master's degree in history from a Danish university. In jest, I will usually say that I also have a degree from the School of Hard Knocks and a degree from the University of Life Sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't think any of our listeners would be surprised to hear that you have a formal education in history. Because it's one of the strengths of your storytelling, I think. So.
Thank you.
So you're part of the CharismaToAC group, and which of our current games do you participate in?
Well, I mean, obviously, I play in a couple of games that are not actually recorded. But the ones that we do record here for CharismaToAC, I run a Songatara as the storyteller, and I play a Sister of Battle by the name of Francesca on the Hereticus campaign.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, I wish I played more. In fact, I really wish I played more. But c'est la vie.
C'est la vie indeed. Yeah, I think that's a curse really for most gamers, is that there aren't enough hours in a day.
Well,
really.
There is that, but you have to remember again, as we said before, I'm currently unemployed. I need something to fill my days.
That's true. I suppose. That's true. Okay, so we have this snazzy banner on our YouTube channel, which portrays, I think, all of us.
I think
maybe.
So, yeah, I think so.
Could you?
Well, yeah.
Could you talk about a bit your
yes.
portrayal, your character?
Yes, I can. I am, in fact, the dark and sinister Cheshire cat grinning creature in the middle of the whole thing, the reason for this depiction of me, whereas the rest of you are obviously a little more, however super deformed, a little more true to what you actually look like, In my case, it has something to do with the fact that I'm not terribly keen on having too many representations of myself in any form on the internet. And Michelle, who is the cupcake lady in the in the banner, who drew the banner, basically decided that the best way to represent me was to make me this evil, shadowy, grinning, leering character in the background, holding the fate of all the poor players in my hands, because that's what I do. And I think if a Song of Tara has proven anything, it's that I am in fact that kind of unfathomably evil bitch to my players with alarming regularity. So, and I have to say, by the way, the fact that you guys keep coming back for more makes me think you're all a bunch of masochists.
Maybe, but then again, it is, well, at least for a Song of Tara, it is horror, and you're pretty good at that.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's why we keep coming back for more, and because we're massive. Yeah,
that too.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, so how long have you been doing this roleplay thing that we do?
Oh, God. I am a couple of months away from my 30th anniversary as a role player, which obviously means that I've been role playing for nearly 31 years, since your first anniversary is the end of the first full year of having done something. So I'm coming up on 31 years of this. Makes me feel old.
Yeah. And I think you'd agree that the hobby has come quite a long way since the dark days of.
Oh, good grief! Yes, oh man, I'm old enough to remember when there was an organization called Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons, with the very apt acronym BAD.
Yeah. That was a fun time.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And so, how did it all start? All those many years ago.
It's a bit of a roundabout story, I have to say, but I'll try and get around it anyway, because it started in the summer of 1986, and I was young and kind of silly, and I still liked football, and Denmark had qualified for the World Cup for the very first time. And it was supposed to be played in Mexico that year, and I was just walking around the streets in a feverish state of googly-eyed fandom sort of thing. And then my parents decided that we should go on a summer holiday to Norway to visit some family. And now, at first I panicked, and then I realized, well, wait a second, Norwegians have invented the TV as well, so, it's not so bad. Until I then learned that my parents actually intended for us to spend most of that summer at a summer holiday, or summer house, without any modern amenities, including a TV set. So I was literally panicking because, oh my God, I wasn't going to be able to see the matches. But then, of course, when we got there, it turned out that Denmark got knocked out before the latter stages of the tournament anyway, in a 5-1 loss to Spain, which apparently still hurts Danish football fans to this day, 31 years later. And the point is that I was kind of all right with going to this summer home, because of course Denmark wasn't playing anymore, but it was still sort of this, oh God, this is just going to be sitting around on a lawn for 2.5 weeks. It's going to be so boring. And then the boy in the house, in the family that we were visiting, a kid called James, who's a couple of years older than me, basically said, well, I've got something that might help you, keep you entertained. And then he showed me these books that he had. He said this was his new hobby. And it was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition, core rule books. And I had never heard of this before. I was completely flabbergasted. I had no clue what this was until he began to explain to me what it was all about. He helped me create a character. I actually believe it was a fighter, if I'm not too mistaken. And it legitimized to me. I was a child with a very vivid imagination already. And this kind of legitimized having that extremely vivid imagination and wanting to tell all these fantastic stories. And it kind of went from there. I came home from that holiday, my head was still spinning from all of this. I got a hold of my best friend and told him, listen, we're going to have to do something about this because I have seen the lights. And I explained to him what it was all about, and he was sold on the idea. So we saved up some money from our pocket money. We went and bought the first game system I ever owned, which in fact was not Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, because at the time I couldn't find it in Aalborg, in the city where I lived. I couldn't find a place where they sold it. What I could find, however, was something a lot sillier, if you would. It was a Marvel Superheroes game. I read comic books like many other kids, so I thought, why not? Bought that, got started that way. Within a month or two, we had a couple of other friends join us, and within a few months of that, we had actually moved on from that system to GURPS, and I never looked back.
You never look back. Cool. So, you've been gaming tabletop role-playing games for 30 plus years.
Yeah.
But what about when you're not gaming? What kind of hobbies or interests do you have besides tabletop role-playing?
Is there such a thing as life outside role-playing? Don't say such things.
No, but
I'm sitting here. I'm developing a twitch in my eye. Oh no, seriously. No, I mean, obviously, I'm an absolutely unabashed and unashamed history nerd. I like to say I've never met a historical topic I didn't like. And I think I can say with at least a measure of justification that over the years I've accumulated pretty much an encyclopedic knowledge of many areas of history. They're varied areas. Of course, there are areas I know absolutely bugger all about, but I think I'm very much a generalist. I know quite a bit about a lot of things. I'll watch a lot of quality documentaries on such issues. I'll listen to radio programs about it. BBC4 has a very good program called In Our Time, which I listen to a lot, for example, but it's just one example. But much more importantly than that, I'm a writer. And I've got 2 books in a series of 4, which has just been approved for publication by an American publisher called Caliburn Press, and I'm waiting for an editor to be assigned to me. And there's always a waiting list, so that's fine. It's okay that I haven't gotten an editor yet, but the books have been approved for publication, so they will be. It's dark fantasy. First one is going to be called Raven of the South. The second is called Dove of the West, and there are 2 more books coming. I'm working on the third one now, and yeah, I know that's a shameless plug and it's self-promotion, but I don't give a damn. In any way, it's not completely irrelevant because I'm actually planning a campaign for CharismaToAC called The Long Voyage, which is set in that world that I've created. So yeah, that's it might be up by the time you, dear listener, listen to this. It might already be posted on CharismaToAC, depending on when you join us. But for at the time of recording this, that campaign hasn't started yet, at least.
It's something I really look for.
All right.
I've looked at some of the stuff you already. Pretty damn cool. Anyway, that's you as a person.
Yeah.
Then there is the hobby.
Yeah.
And what is it about role playing that appeals to you the most?
I think what appeals to me the most is it's the freedom of expression and how deep you can go with it. Because to me, role-playing is first and foremost about creating a story. And it's whether you are the role player or the game master or the storyteller or whatever part in the group you're playing or having, it's all, in the end, it's all about creating a story. But to create the story, you need to create people. You have to have the characters in place, or the NPCs, because they're really the framework, in my opinion, of any story. They're the ones that all stories revolve around. And for that reason, I'm completely disinterested in two-dimensional characters. I don't mind spending a whole game session. I mean, we have seen this even here on CharismaToAC, where I don't mind spending an entire game session where all we're doing is social interaction in character and there is no advancement of the plot whatsoever, but it helps the characters grow and become more fleshed out and more believable. And I enjoy that. I really enjoy that because I want to get to know the people that these characters are, and I want to make them so real that I can hear their voices and see the way they move. And the best part of doing it in a group is that I don't have complete creative control. When I write my stories, I have complete creative control because it's only me creating the story, so I know what all of these characters are doing. But when I'm sitting there with other role players, I have to constantly react to unknown things because they are taking action, they are doing something, they are saying something which does not come from me. And quite frankly, I get high on that. It's almost like a narcotic.
Can't say I disagree with that. Yeah. So there are lots of systems out there to choose from.
Yes.
The hobby's grown immensely since its early days.
Yeah.
But which of the current offerings is your favorite? Which system do you prefer?
Well,
Or systems, you can choose one of them.
yeah. As I said, I've RP'd for over 30 years, so the amount of game systems I have played over the years are legion. I mean, I've played some games once or twice, maybe at a convention or part of a, somebody wanted to start up a group and then we played the first time or the first two times and then it kind of died off because it didn't work or whatever. And then, of course, there are games that I've played many times over the years, and I just, for that reason, it really is impossible for me to say that there's one that's my favorite one, because there are so many that it's a bit like putting a person who's starving to death in front of a big 5-star buffet and asking them to point out what it is they like the best. I'm just going to launch myself at the damn thing and gorge myself until I puke. and that really is the way it is. But the game system that I always end up coming back to, I mean, that's I suppose you can probably use that as a benchmark, I guess. But the one I always end up coming back to is the storyteller system, the World of Darkness. And I think I must have played more hours of Vampire the Masquerade than I've played any other role-playing game at all, including something like Pathfinder, or before that, Dungeons and Dragons in its various iterations. I actually think I've spent more time on VTM than I have on any of those. And that's also why I'm running something like A Song of Tara on this channel, because it's a system that I'm incredibly comfortable with. Not so much the rules side of it, because it's very rules light. It's a rules light system, but the setting and the feel of it and so on and so forth, and it's an open enough system that I can have my World of Darkness, which is my version of it, and another storyteller will have his or her version of it, which is slightly different or even radically different, but it's all the World of Darkness. And I kind of like that. And I've played primarily in the World of Darkness. I've played Vampire, I've played Werewolf, and I've played Changeling. And I'll just add one little note to that at the end, because some people I know think that Changeling is a horrible game, and they tend to think that it's the happy, fluffy, pink bunny and candy floss game, basically, of the World of Darkness setting. And to that, all I will say is, try playing a game where you have to escape from within the nightmare of a 7-year-old abandoned girl in an orphanage, and then come back and tell me that it's fluffy.
Yeah, that does sound dark. It does. Okay, so throughout your years as a gamer, you must have experienced a lot. You've sat at the same table with a lot of different gamers. And you've played a lot of different systems.
Yeah.
What are your, if you can, what are your pet peeves regarding the hobby?
I've got, I suppose I've got many, because the older you get, the grumpier you get, or something.
Yeah.
But I'll highlight two, because I can't really choose between them and say which one is the worst, because they annoy me equally. But the first one is when rules become more important than role playing. I'm as anybody who's listened to anything I've recorded here should know, that I'm an absolute ardent, dyed-in-the-wool supporter of the golden rule, or rule 0, whatever you want to call it, which basically states that if the rules get in the way of the story or of role-playing, then change the rule or ignore it. And now, I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not saying that rules aren't useful or even important, because they are. You need them for character generation, you need them for combat, you need for random chance at rolling dice, whatever. I mean, clearly there's a need for rules, but I absolutely hate it when they become more important than the game, when the intricacies and nitty-gritty of what does this rule say on page so and so becomes more important than the narrative and the flow of the story and the role playing. That is an absolute pet peeve for me, and it completely ruins my fun. And secondly, I cannot abide min-maxing, and I need to explain what I mean by min-maxing, because it's more than simply having someone saying, "Oh, I'll squeeze every single point I can out of the system so that I get +1 extra to whatever stat." It's more than that, because you can have people who want to create a character who is deficient in an area, or one area or another. You can have a character who's not very nimble and is a klutz, and butterfingers falling over his or her own feet. But if that's what you want to play, then I don't have a problem with you dumping your dexterity, or whatever the equivalent stat might be, and then maybe spending points somewhere else instead, which means that you might instead be massively strong or super intelligent or whatever. I'm fine with that, because that's the intention. That's what you wanted to do with the character. My problem is when you end up with players who say, "Oh, but just to take an example, a wizard in Pathfinder. I want to play a wizard. I want to be the bestest archmage ever. I want to be the most incredible archmage, and I will squeeze every single point I can out of this system so that I get, I start the game with 20 or even 22 points of intelligence, but okay, I will need someone to carry my scroll cases for me because paper is too heavy to lift. And at the same time, I look like a tuberculotic concentration camp inmate, because that's how sickly I am. But that's not important, because I can shoot off 600 fireballs every day. If that's your motivation for making that character, that is min-maxing, and I'll get up and leave the table. That annoys me.
Okay. So the idea that rules overshadow the story and min-maxing.
Yeah. That.
Okay. Okay, so you do get to play. You're currently playing a few games, or a couple of games.
Not enough. Not enough.
Which of the characters you currently play is your favorite?
Well, at the moment, it's actually a character which is not recorded here on CharismaToAC. I play at this time. I play two characters. One is the Sister of Battle on the Hereticus campaign, and one is a tiefling brawler called Cassandra, which we play in a Curse of the Crimson Thrones campaign, which you run, incidentally. And since that campaign is played in Danish, it's not getting recorded because how much of a an audience would we have anyway? But she is my favorite at the moment, without any comparison. Cassandra is. She looks monstrous. She's bright red. She's got digitigrade legs. She's got a black horn sticking out of her forehead. She's got hooves. She's got a prehensile tail. All of these things. She's an incredibly complex character, and she's struggling with some of the same issues that I'm struggling with. And I'm normally wary of doing that because don't role play real life. But in this case, I think I have managed to do it in a way where it's been incredibly cathartic for me, and it's really helped me a lot. I think more than anything, I like Cassandra because she is a genuinely good person. I remember a situation we had in that group where somebody asked, I can't remember who it was, but one of the other players asked pretty much what she wanted to do they had some time off, and and Cass just basically shrugged and walked away and spent a few coppers on a loaf of bread, which she then went to found a couple of street kids who looked hungry, and she gave them the bread, and then she held up a tarpaulin while they were sitting underneath it to eat. Well, they were eating the bread while the rain was coming down in buckets all around them, and she was having a perfectly happy evening doing that. And so basically Cassandra has a genuinely good heart, and I think I like her for that.
Okay. Well, let's expand the question a bit, because as we've established, you've played for just over 3 decades, and you've played a lot of characters. And which of these characters is your all-time favorite?
And obviously, I mean, I have forgotten more characters than most people have played. I'm pretty sure. Sure. But I will say the one that I keep coming back to, and where I still keep a lot of material for this character around, was actually the character I played when I got into this group. And her name was also in a Pathfinder campaign, and her name was Kizmat, as in a word which also means fate. And Kizmat was, without any question, the evilest character I've ever played. It was in an evil aligned campaign. Admittedly, it was called Way of the Wicked, but Kizmat was unfathomably, irredeemably, murderously evil. She would have killed everyone in the world, danced on the bleached bones, and put a bullet in her own head in the end, and been perfectly happy doing so. And that may sound really simplistic and kind of murder hobo-ish, but it's hard to explain if you weren't there to see it. But I think those of us who experienced it, and again, you were the GM, I think you can probably confirm here that I think the very last thing you could call Kizmat was simple.
Yep. That's true. I think that went for most of the characters in the campaign, but yes. There were so many levels to Kizmat.
She was the result of some absolutely extreme neglect and emotional abuse.
Yeah. And one of the things I remember fondly of that character was the journal entries that you sent to me.
Yes, I used to write her diary, and she wrote her dreams down as well. Yeah. She had these semi-prophetic dreams. If that campaign had continued, I'm pretty sure they would have led to something pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I have no doubt. Uh, oh well,
Yeah, well,
unfortunately.
unfortunately. But then again,
Yeah.
we can remember the characters fondly because they never got
Mm,
to die.
yeah. They never got to die. That's true.
So conceivably, she's still out there shooting people.
Probably somewhere out there. Yes. Okay. So, what type of character do you lean toward when you? What kind of characters do you typically play, if there is such a thing as typically in this case?
Yeah, that's the thing because started out thinking how am I going to answer this, and I thought, well, if it's fantasy, I usually end up playing clerics, and then I thought, no, I don't, not anymore. I mean, yeah, if you go back enough years, then yes, that would almost be that would have been my go-to class.
Hmm.
But these days, I play something different. Most I'm good at varying myself these days. I think I want to try different things. I will say that something I rarely do is get myself entangled in arcane magic casters. I don't usually do that. I don't even know why. There's no real reason to it. I just rarely do it.
Okay. So pretty much everything is up for grabs.
Yes,
Arcane.
I'll
For
try
some
anything at least once. That sounds so wrong.
It does, but there is a context to it. So.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
So, speaking of trying, is there anything that you haven't tried yet, RP wise, that you would like to try?
I tried to think about this one as well because again you have to go back through so many years and
Yeah.
it's like I said, I've played hyper science fiction, I've played cavemen, I've played gods, I've played commoners who tried to survive when mighty creatures struggled all around them. I've played Tales from the Floating Vagabond and Call of Cthulhu, just to take a couple of, polar opposites here. I've played mutated animals, I've played superheroes, I've played rogues, villains, and whatever the hell else you can think of, I think. I've probably tried it at some point or others. I think the thing to point out here is that there were several years of my life, almost, I think, 4 or 5 years of my life in my very late teens and early 20s where I played 7 or 8 groups a week, or played or GM'd 7 or 8 groups a week. And I can't recommend that. Let me just say that right away. That's extremely unhealthy, and it is
Yeah.
going too far. But I did at the time. That's what I did. So there have been so many nights of role playing in my life that I don't really think it. I mean, I can't think of anything I haven't tried.
Okay, that's fair. You've been going on for 30 plus years, so.
Yes.
Uh, so, speaking of experience, is there anything? Is there any advice as regards role playing that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, there is, and I'll it's pretty simple, really. Have fun, and I mean that in a very literal sense. Have fun, and if it's not fun, then don't do it. Um, you always need to remember, in my opinion, that you're doing this to enjoy yourself. It's a hobby you do voluntarily because you want to have fun. And if you're not having fun, then get up and walk away, find another game, take a break, find some new people to play with, whatever the hell you need to do. Just don't do it if you're not having fun, because if you're not, you're going to end up either burning out on it or even grow to resent it, and nobody benefits from that. You may think that you have to, you have to continue, or you have to soldier on, you have to try because, let's say you're the GM and the whole group depends on you to even have a game to play. Yeah, maybe so. But if you're not having fun being the GM anymore, you're probably not going to tell a very good story to begin with. And even if you are, you're going to end up loathing it and looking for ways to, find reasons to cancel every week and so on. Do yourself and your players a favor and find some solution to it, and don't GM for a while or whatever. Just, if you're not having fun, don't do it.
I absolutely agree. So we've kind of established already that you have GM experience.
Yes.
And so I think my question would be, we've also established that you've tried everything, but have you also tried everything as a GM, or is there anything as a GM you'd like to try that you haven't already?
Well, actually, it's worth pointing out that I was, strictly speaking, a GM before I was a player, and it's absolutely as disastrous as that sounds. but if there's anything I haven't tried as a GM, yes, there is one thing I haven't tried, and that is what I'm about to do with the Long Voyage, with the campaign that is coming up in my own world. And that is creating something which is completely original. I haven't done that before. I've always worked from an existing framework. I've always worked from an existing game world in some way or other. Even when I've tried creating sort of my own game world in the past, I will have used a pantheon from an existing world to have something recognizable in it. This is entirely original, and I'm really looking forward to trying my hand with that.
Right, playing in your own sandbox, so to speak.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, we're about finished with this interview, but before we do wrap it up, is there anything about yourself, either personally or gaming related, that you'd like to share that we haven't already mentioned?
Well, there is one thing, and that is that of those of us here on CharismaToAC, of the people in that banner at the top of the channel, I think I was probably the most, or at least the second most hesitant to try this this whole thing of creating a channel and uploading things like this. I was very, very nervous about it. In fact, I'm an intensely private person, believe it or not. I'm not very good with other people, at least not face to face. I'm not, especially not very good with people I don't know, and I don't handle exposure very well. So that's been a struggle, but I think I've managed to overcome it pretty well. But the point is that, I mean, nowadays I do enjoy this channel. I like I like what we do with it. I like that we have this. It's another creative outlet, basically. It's just, that's what it is for me. It's another creative outlet. But even now, I have days where I want to write to Daniel, who is of course the webmaster of the channel, and just tell him to, please delete everything with me in it. I don't do it, but I do have days like that where I'm struggling against that kind of impulse, and that means this is the part I was trying to get to, is that when I have a bad day like that, I overcompensate. So I'll be even louder, and I'll be even more verbose, and I'll be even more front and center than I probably, unfortunately, already tend to be. And I know that comes across on some of the recordings, because I've been sitting here listening back to some of the older recordings, and there are times where I can basically tell from listening to it, ooh, I had a bad day when that happened, because I'm turned up to 120%. So basically, I'm just gonna take this opportunity to apologize to the listeners in advance for when that happens. It's not something I can control, but it does happen from time to time.
Okay. Well, I think that wraps up this interview and this episode of Meet the Players. Thank you, Joan, for answering this this list of questions.
No problem.
And thank you to our listeners and viewers. Thank you for your continued support, and please keep watching and keep spreading the word of goodness that is CharismaToAC. And
Yes, get us more subscribers. More,
Yes.
more.
we crave them, we feed off them.
Yes.
So on that note, we will see you next time.
Definitely.
And until then, bye.
Bye.